Hi everyone, Aidan here at the etrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at the RoadMaster RoadWing temporary mud flap. This is going to be a great solution if you only need a mud flap whenever you're towing. So this will clamp around the shank of your ball mount and provide protection for your trailer, your camper, or maybe if you've got another vehicle behind you. It's going to protect it from debris, dirt, mud, rocks, from getting kicked up and making contact with that. Let's check it out. Now this version of the RoadWing is designed for use on full-size trucks and will work with 2-inch hitches. So we're using it on a 2500 today with a 2.5-inch hitch. So we needed to use a reducer sleeve to use our 2-inch shank ball mount. So just keep that in mind when you're checking this out for your own vehicle. RoadMaster does make a larger and a smaller size of the RoadWing, so if you have something like a mid-size truck or a larger full-size, maybe with duallies in the back, then you can look into those options and find what fits best for you. But this one will work with those 2-inch hitches, so just keep that in mind. Most of the mud flap system is pretty self-explanatory. You probably know exactly why you're getting it to protect something that you're towing. The one thing that we ran into that caused some problems and that I want to pass on to you is the kind of clearance issues we had when first setting this up. So the big thing about this is because it clamps around the shank of your ball mount or your weight distribution head, it's going to need a lot of clearance. Anywhere from 2 or more inches of space. What I recommend doing is going to whatever ball mount you have, putting it in your hitch and seeing outside the collar of your receiver tube to the closest point of contact, whether it's a gusset or just the ball mount itself. See if you've got at least 2 inches of space. If you have more than that, great. There's going to be plenty of room for this to work, but we ran into a lot of issues where certain ball mounts, when they were in the receiver tube there and pinned into place, there's barely anything to actually clamp onto, and this needs a lot of space. The other issue we ran into is with a weight distribution head we had down in the shop here. That was plenty long, but the edges of the shank were really rounded off, and this didn't fit over it at all. So just watch out for that. The tolerances on the bracket here, I think, are just a little bit tighter than they might be on a typical receiver tube. So just make sure that you've got some more squared off edges, and I think it'll work just fine. And once you've got it all figured out with your ball mount situation and verified that it's going to work, the rest of this is really straightforward. It spans 77 inches from side to side, so plenty wide for our truck today. And each flap is going to be 24 inches by 24 inches. Now you'll see that ours are dragging on the ground right now. We're not permanently installing these right now. We're just testing them out to see how they fit, so we're not going to make any cuts. But RoadMaster does recommend cutting these to length to make sure that they don't drag on the ground. And I would advise doing that as well, because this is a somewhat flexible, sort of rubberized material, but it's very plasticky. It feels very rigid. So I would not let these drag on the ground because they just don't have that much give to them. And maybe that's because it's straight out of the box for us, but regardless, I would follow those instructions and make sure they're trimmed to the proper length so that they don't drag. There are some nuts on the back side of the bracket here where it attaches to the ball mount that are tightened down to help hold this in place and keep it level and also keep it from rattling around. Now you'll notice we still have a lot of movement here, but the ball mount is moving with it. So the mud flaps are tight on the ball mount. The ball mount just doesn't have any sort of extra anti-rattle device on it. Now normally I'd recommend some sort of collar anti-rattle device to keep the ball mount a little bit more steady, but because we're using a collar device right here, more than likely you're not going to have any extra room for an anti-rattle device like that. You may be able to find one if you have a hollow shank ball mount, but in those cases, I doubt you're using something like this anyway, because chances are if you're using this mud flap system, you've probably got a pretty heavy duty ball mount for a larger trailer or a boat trailer, something like that, and it's probably a solid shank. And that's really all there is to it. If you're looking for a way to protect whatever trailer or vehicle that you're towing behind your truck, then I think something like this can be a really great addition, especially if you don't want to have to deal with it all the time. when you're done towing, just take it off. I think it's a little unruly to work with, but really any temporary mud flap solution like this is gonna be like that because they're just quite large. What I do like though is that it's all one solid piece, and once you've got it assembled, it's really no brainer. You can just pop it on and off as needed. And I think it'll be easier to work with when you've got those mud flaps at the bottom trimmed to the length that you need for your truck and trailer combination. Just make sure that you watch out for whatever ball mount you're using this with, and make sure you've got enough clearance for it, and make sure you pick up the right one for the right size hitch or truck that you're using. But this has just been our look at the RoadMaster RoadWing temporary mud flap for full-size trucks. Thanks for watching.